Ashley, where's Ryan? Why is he not on watching us?
The great pop sensation Hannah Montana, or Miley Cyrus if you will, has this fun little song where she tries to convince everyone that she's just an ordinary girl. And she tries to use little tidbits of this song, like she gets happy and silly and she chokes on her own words, you know, things that I just do every single day. And I think I tried to make this song my anthem. You know, just take off my wig at the end of the day and be your average girl next door. But I'm beginning to realize that I am not your average girl next door. In fact, I am anything but ordinary. I'll give you an example. When you look at me, there are two things that tend to stand out. One, I am a tiny little adult, and two, I look, sound, and sometimes accidentally dress myself like a toddler. But don't get me wrong, I have been a woman for longer than you think. See, when I was 10 years old, I was visited by what some might like to call Aunt Flo. And for several reasons, this day is just absolutely awful. But for me, I was straight up shocked. Because you see, the year before that, in the 4th grade, I was just in the bathroom, minding my own business, when all of a sudden, this girl who I barely even knew pulled me into the bathroom stall. And she pointed at some blood on the toilet seat. And in the most ominous voice I have ever heard, looks at me and says, "Do you see that blood right there? That blood can only mean one thing. That girl is no longer a virgin, and now she has to stick something up her butt." Now, mind you, I only heard this word virgin at church at Christmas time, so not only was I confused, I was so terrified that this fate was going to be bestowed upon me. But unfortunately, a year later it did. See, it was the 5th grade, and I was going to meet my teacher over the summer, right before school started. And I remember I put on my most sparkliest shirt from Justice and some really nice light pants to match. And let me tell you, I felt like a supermodel. And I went to go see my teacher, and I noticed that everyone around me at school was really observing my outfit and really checking me out. And you know, I knew I looked good, but I didn't think I looked that good. So I made a mental note in my head that I was gonna go check out and see what they were looking at. But you see, the problem was when I got home, I realized it wasn't the outfit that they were looking at. It was the blood stain that was tainting the back of my pants. Now obviously I thought I was dying, because why else would there be blood down there? But you know what? I remembered from the year before that the girl in the bathroom told me that this meant that I was no longer a virgin, and now I was gonna have to stick something up my butt. But I didn't know what that was, and I wasn't about to call her up on my home phone and ask her some questions. So I had to resort to the next best thing and tell my mom. I didn't tell her about the whole butt stuff, but I did tell her that I was dying and that I needed help. But she didn't seem to think I needed help. Instead, she got the biggest smile on her face and left the room. Well, naturally, I started bawling like a baby because I had no idea what she was going to bring in to stick on out there. But when she came back in, she had this little square in her hand, which I later realized was a pad, and she said, "Congratulations, you are now a woman!" and threw the thing at me. And then left the room, and I had to go figure out how to apply it all by myself. But anyway, all that to say, I have been a woman before I even reached the preteen stages of my life by this point. But you know, I've had some really weird experiences as a child overall. Besides the fact that I am an awkward human, my personality was definitely molded by the weirdest family that you will ever meet. I'll give you an example. My dad has his clown license. I'm not even kidding you when I say that my dad is an actual clown. So that meant for several years of my life, I had to watch my dad go off dressed as most people's nightmare and perform at birthday parties as a source of income. while he was dressed as a clown. And I had to sit there while people were pointing and honking and waving and laughing. And while all those things weren't directed at me, I felt all these things very strongly. And I really wish that I could say that my traumatic experiences have stayed in the past, but unfortunately, I am a magnet for these kinds of things. There's this one experience in particular that I literally cannot understand or explain to this day. See, I was just standing in the kitchen eating organic Oreos, because, that's how you live the hippie kombucha life with my friend. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a man standing in the window staring at us. Now, mind you, we are two 15-year-old dummies who just stand around eating cookies for a living, so naturally, I had no idea how to defend myself. But then, suddenly I thought, maybe we should just stop, drop, and roll. So that's what we did. I grabbed my friend by the shoulders, yanked her down to the ground, cookie package still in hand, and we began rolling around through the back of the house, cookies flying left and right. Meanwhile, the man from the window brought friends, and they were banging on the door, yelling things at us like they were about to murder us or something. And my word, I have never felt so vulnerable in my entire life. I mean, these potential murderers watched us roll around on the floor like idiots. Of course, they could have just come in and killed us or something. It would have been so easy. But somehow, after watching us execute the most prime fire safety skills, they left and we lived. But you know what? After that experience, I only eat cookies in the bathroom because there are no windows in there. But that creepy I'm watching you experience actually only became a series of creepy I'm watching you experiences from strangers watching me in my most vulnerable state. There was this one time that I was sitting at a gate waiting to go to California, and I'd only had like 2 hours of sleep, so I already was not having a good time. But what I saw at my gate was straight up the icing on the cake. See, this couple comes in, and the man's like 50-something, and the woman is at least 20 years younger, so it's already kind of creepy. But they decide to come and sit down in the 2 seats behind me and start making out. And when I say making out, I don't just mean like casual pecks here and there. No, some serious saliva was being tossed around in there. And not only that, they were whispering things to each other so loud that I could almost hear it. And my word, it was so disgusting. And this went on for what felt like 20 years before finally my gate decided to board. Now, I was flying on the most beautiful Southwest Airlines, so I got to pick wherever the heck I wanted to sit. So I decided to sit next to a window seat. Because, at a window seat, you could like contemplate life or pretend that you're in a music video and just stare out the window for a really long time. But anyway, I was picking my song for the music video when suddenly I heard a voice say, "Hey, these 2 seats right here are open." And guess who it was? The lip-locking nasties from the gate. That's who. And they sat down right there in the 2 seats right next to me, and I was not about to have them ruin my 3.5 hours by making out. So I went to sleep. And I slept the entire flight. And whenever I woke up, I thought everything was over and things were going to be great. But then I look over and I see that the man is sitting there staring at me like he wants to say something. So I kind of just sit there and wait on him, and finally he says, "We were watching you sleep. You want to see what you look like?" Now obviously I did not want to see what I look like, because what in the world? So I told him no, but he did it anyway. He violently turned his head to the side like this, closed his eyes, and opened his mouth like this. And I was mortified because Juliet over here was dying laughing because her Romeo was so romantically funny or something. And my word, it was horrible, the worst time in the entire world. But I knew that I just had to separate myself and just remember that I was never going to have an awkward flight experience ever again. But boy, was I wrong. Because this other time, I was on flight and I was at the very last seat on the plane. And when I got to this seat, I noticed that there were two men sitting on either side of it. One man was just on his iPad minding his own business. Meanwhile, the man on the other side was pointing at the seat and waving at me like I was some long-lost cousin at a barbecue he was dying to reunite with. And obviously, I did not want to sit down next to this man, but I had no other choice. So, reluctantly, I sat down, and thus began the longest conversation with a man named Greg I have ever experienced in my entire life. See, Greg here was so excited to get to know me. He asked me every single question that he could, and he started showing me pictures of his girlfriend and told me a really lot of outdated jokes and didn't understand why I didn't laugh. But I think what really got me was Greg actually was trying to get to the bottom of why I am the way that I am. He started asking me really interesting questions like, why are you an actress? What kind of things are you hiding in your life? Why do you actually hate yourself? And I'm not going to answer these questions because Greg is a stranger. So I just give him some surface level answers, and this actually gets him to start thinking. He sits there and he ponders for a little bit until finally he says, you know what? I think I know what you're going to do with your life. You are going to move to Ireland and you are going to find yourself while searching for nymphs in the Irish foothills. Now, obviously, this flight was already weird, but I knew that this Greg guy was crazy. I had no idea what I said to him, but I just know I felt like I had received the worst palm reading in the entire world. But you know what? At the same time, I kind of want to know if this Greg guy was right. But anyway, I've had so many weird experiences with older people. My landlords, for example. See, first of all, I live in their backyard, so it's already kind of a weird experience. But I have learned some really strange things from them. See, when I called to inquire about the house, they seemed like the most southern biscuits and gravy people that you will ever meet. But when I met them in person, boy, was I wrong. Because when I got to the house, two 70-year-old long-haired hippies came floating out, and they came up to me and they were already out of this world, if you know what I mean. Let me tell you, they definitely are the definition of hippies. They are essential oil loving, all natural, vegetarian, chopped chicken with an axe on a tree stump for their three-legged dog, just normal hippie things. But there's one thing about them that I didn't want to speculate, but I kind of just figured out that maybe they liked marijuana more than just on a tacky graphic t-shirt. And one time that suspicion was confirmed for me. See, I was walking home late at night, and all of a sudden I had this strong whiff of marijuana floating through my nostrils. Now, mind you, I am a woman of the law, and I was not about to be associated with that smell, so I ran. And as I got back home and I got comfortable, I kind of started thinking, how in the world did they get this pot? I mean, did they have some 70-year-old drug dealer walking around selling this stuff? Or did they have Chad from Beta Theta Chocolate Pie selling them the weed? Either way, I'm sure it was a really weird experience. But let me tell you, besides the fact that they are a little bit strange, they are really great people. They love concerts, and they love going to concerts at abnormally late hours for old people. And they shared this one flip phone together that they'd never texted on before. And one time they texted me at a concert and then called me to make sure that I got it. But overall, they are just such great people, and they have taught me so much about life and the importance of just stopping and thinking about the little things. And they've honestly made my college experience so much better. But speaking of college experience, wow, what a time mine has been. See, I've been a freshman for 2 years in a row pretty much. And let me tell you, freshman year is awful. And you have to relive it twice. It's even worse. See, the first time I was a freshman, I lived in this really dusty yee town in the middle of nowhere. Walmart was the main attraction of this place. And if that doesn't scream prime college hangout, I'm not sure what does. But I will say there was a really famous attraction connected to this place. See, the full title of the dining hall was the World Famous Bean. You want to know why it was world famous? Because international students eat there from around the world.
Oh.
So yeah, that cheesy name for a dining hall, and also the fact that every single girl graduated with her engagement ring and her degree kind of made me realize that maybe I didn't want to go to this place anymore. So I resigned myself from what felt like a year-long episode of the College Bachelor, and I moved on to bigger and better things. And honestly, my next 3 years were very unique in comparison. You know, there are a lot of things that I could say about Fort Worth. There was this one time in particular that was equally weird. I was walking past the library one day when all of a sudden I heard this high-pitched sound, which I could only describe as a baby on a motorcycle. What I saw wasn't a baby on a motorcycle, but what I did see was actually so much better than that. Because all of a sudden, this bicycle came slowly zooming past me. And as it got closer, I realized that there was a motor duct taped to the back of it. And it wasn't really going any faster than he would if he was just pedaling, but I don't know, whatever, I guess. But as he got closer to me, all of a sudden, the bicycle started violently shaking, and suddenly the motor shot off the back of the bike and started bouncing off into the street. And the only other people to witness this besides me were these two people sitting on a bench waiting for their bus. And so the four of us just kind of sat there in complete agony for what felt like 40 hours. Until finally the woman interrupted the agony by saying, "Hey, I think your bike broke," which is honestly a great thing to say in any situation. But the only thing that made it better was she did not help him pick up these pieces at all. I think I really learned that day that poor people really can't win at any experience, so that was really, really tragic to watch. But I realized actually that there are a lot of interesting transportation experiences that I've had my time here at TCU. See, this one time I had what I could only describe as the worst Uber driver in the entire world. See, I got in the car with my friends, and immediately he told us that he had never interacted with sober people before. And, you know, that's a little bit concerning to hear, but I was okay with it, I guess. Until 5 minutes in the ride, I actually realized he had never interacted with sober people before. Because as we pulled up to the first red light, this dude gets out of the car and stands in the street to stare at the red light. Why? I don't know. But there he is, standing there staring at it until the light turns green. And then he just kind of stands there and waits for 5 more seconds before realizing, oh, maybe I should get in the car and drive the thing. So he gets back in, and obviously we're a little bit freaked out by this experience, and we have to sit there and silence while he just keeps talking and talking. And he says a lot of weird things.
That's real.
One thing that he was in a notorious gang that I will not mention. But also another thing, he told me that he wanted me to drive the last 5 minutes of the ride. Now, obviously, passengers are not allowed to drive the last 5 minutes of the ride, so I thought he was joking and I laughed it off and said that I would. But he was not joking, because in the last 5 minutes of the ride, he pulls off into this dirt parking lot that is poorly lit, gets out of the car and tries to coax me out so I can drive the last 5 minutes. No, obviously I shut this down so quickly and I stopped it before he even let me do anything. And I was completely scarred for life from this experience. So pretty much I've decided that after that experience, I give myself a day's head start and just walk to every location. But just like I escaped that experience, I have escaped several other things in my lifetime. One of those things was in fact America. By that I mean I just studied internationally over the summer. I went to Russia. And I would just like to say, if I had any advice to give to anybody here, it would probably be to study at a place where you have absolutely no idea what they're saying. It will make your experience so much more heightened. Because you see, the problem was, the only sentence that I knew how to say in Russian I mean, is, this is my bicycle, not my soup. Which, you know, is a great conversation starter all the time. So obviously I got in a lot of situations because of this issue. There's one experience in particular. My friends and I were super hungry because we had not eaten all day long. And I'd like to make a little side note that I tried not to eat at any American fast food restaurants in Russia because, you know, why would I do that? But on this particular day, during this time, the only place that was still open was a Subway. You know, the place where you go down the line and tell people with words what you want on your sandwich. And 3 Americans who don't speak any Russian trying to tell a Russian person what we want on our sandwich just kind of sounded like a nightmare. But obviously we had no other choice, so we just had to bite the bullet and do it. And it actually wasn't that bad. We were able to figure out that if you just go down the line and point at things, he's able to figure out what we wanted. Until we got to the sauce portion. See, you know at a Subway how all the sauces are in this little metal container all clumped together? You can't really just point at a sauce and he'll know exactly what you're saying. So we had to resort to this sticker on the glass that translated all the English words into Russian. So we translated the word mustard as best we could. And it worked, kind of. Because he pulls out this bottle with this kind of dark liquid that I guess was honey mustard, but, you know, mind you, I could only talk about my soup, so I couldn't ask any questions. So I just let him do whatever he wanted. And he went to town on this sandwich. He squirted it until I could not see anything else on that bread at all. And it wasn't until my friends and I got back to our hostel that we realized what this dark liquid was. See, my friends and I all took a bite at the same time, and suddenly our mouths started burning and our eyes started welling up with tears. Because this wasn't your average mustard. No, this was the devil's condiment, aka extra spicy Dijon. So let me tell you, the entire time we were sitting there sobbing and our mouths were hurting so bad, but you know, we paid for the thing so we couldn't do anything about it. And you know, after that experience I kind of learned that is why you don't eat American foods in other countries. It is not what the Lord intended. But that experience experience of having a problem communicating to Russians actually was reciprocated when a Russian didn't really know how to communicate with us. See, one time my friends and I were sitting outside of our dorm at a little park practicing our acting scenes, and we were all sitting in this pretty big circle, and a large group of Americans sitting in a circle is obviously going to draw a lot of attention, but I had no idea it was going to draw this kind of attention, because you see, we were just sitting in a circle when all of a sudden this man comes over, and he sits down at the bench closest to us. And instead of sitting down and facing, I don't know, the park, he sits down and faces our circle directly. And unfortunately, I'm the only person that's sitting directly in his eyesight. So every single time I look up, there he is smiling at me. And he knows that I know he's watching, because every single time I look up, he has the creepiest smile on his face. And so, naturally, everyone in the circle was trying to be very discreet and not really draw attention. And that worked, finally, because eventually he got up and he left. And wow, I felt like angels were singing and everything was right in the world. Until he came back with snacks. That's right. The man came back with a snack and a drink and sat down on the bench again and started eating like he was in some movie at a movie theater. And so, by this time we all knew we were being treated like zoo animals, so we were trying to be super, super quiet, and we thought it was working until he got up again and started coming towards our circle. And this time, he was talking to us and saying things like he wanted to play with us or something, which is really creepy, and we didn't really know what to do. So we just gave him our props and hoped that would work. And it did. He played with the props, and then he gave them back, and he went on his merry way. But you know what? I learned something that day. If that is what being famous is like, I don't think I want to do it anymore, because that was really disturbing. But, I really learned a lot in Russia that, words don't actually have to be the main form of communication. There was one time I was at a show in St. Petersburg, and we were sitting there, and this woman in the row behind us started realizing that we were speaking in English. And so she asked us in English if we were going to understand the show, and because we don't speak Russian. And when we said no, she was super confused, and so are we. And it wasn't until I came back to America that I kind of realized that I really could understand the show. The best shows that I saw in Russia were ones that I really couldn't understand what they were saying, but I knew what they were trying to say by the way that they moved themselves across the stage, or by the sound of their voice, or the look on their face. So like, when this naked lady came out on the stage and started sobbing, I knew that she was sad, and she didn't have to say any words, so I think that worked out pretty well. But yeah, I learned so much in Russia about how words don't actually have to be the main form of communication. And that really helped me a lot in life and just acting in general. But at the same time, if words do have some power in the communication, it can be so powerful. Because this one time, my friends and I were at a grocery store buying a bunch of Russian desserts because, we were trying to get the full Russian experience. When all of a sudden, this man came over to us in a really loud voice speaking in English. And let me tell you, when you're in a different country and people don't understand your language and they start speaking your language, it can be just a little bit creepy. But this man didn't mean any harm, for the most part. See, he actually told us that he learned English while he was learning classes in America, and he actually was just wanting to know what states we were from. And so people were going around the circle telling him what states he was from, and he was just saying random things like, cool, great, whatever, blah, 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 until it got to me. See, I told him in the most standard American dialect that I was from Texas, and somehow that brought him great joy. And not because he loved Texas, no. See, he looks at me and in the most yee-yee voice a Russian could muster said, "Oh, you sound like a cowboy," and then proceeded to ask me if I ride my horse to school. So yeah, I was really offended by that. But I also kind of wondered, do people actually park their pony in a parking spot before they walk into school? I don't know, but that experience in a grocery store actually made me realize that every single experience that I've had in a Russian grocery store was so much better than any American grocery store experience that I have ever had. Like this one time at a Russian grocery store, I witnessed a full-on fight. That's right. The cashier was flinging sausage at this woman and throwing coins at her. And, you know, I'm no Russian language expert, but I just want to assume that she either thought that the sausage was free or the cashier was trying to talk her out of a really bad sausage recipe. But either way, wow, that was so fun. But the only thing that made it better was this woman's significant other, her boyfriend or something, was standing there with his back to her and facing the line with the biggest smile on his face, like he was so proud of his woman. Didn't stop to help, didn't interfere, didn't do anything, just stood there smiling. You know, I was happy for him too, because that was the best thing I ever witnessed. But yeah, after that, I kind of realized that every single experience that I had in Russia kind of made every experience that I've had in America now just a lot more boring. Well, actually, there is this one thing that I'll mention. See, I worked at this restaurant. I'm not going to say the name of it, but let's just say it rhymes with Bug-Catalan. And whenever I got this job, I was told that I was going to be a cashier. But when I got there, they told me that I was going to be working salads, which, you know, I thought that would be easy. Just serve the salad, super fun. But it wasn't just serving the salad, because not only that, I had to chop melons and vegetables and serve food and salad, and I had to ladle soup. And one time, this lady yelled at me because I ladled soup in the wrong direction. But then I also had to ring them up at the cash register, and, you know, by the time I finished my 2 days there, I decided that I was just gonna have to quit, because the icing on the cake for that was the manager told me that this wasn't a library and I was allowed to speak louder. And you know, as an acting major, I've never talked loud in my entire life, so while I did learn a lot, I decided that I had to resign myself from that situation. But I will say that I am a little bit ashamed that I did eat the free meal that comes with the training, and I kept the uniform, which I have worn at a couple of costume parties. But that's besides the point. The point is, even though I have no idea how to serve food, and I have really weird experiences with strangers, and I am a really tiny adult baby, I have a pretty ordinary life. Okay, fine, I have a very odd life. But you know what? I am embracing myself as your local not-so-ordinary girl. And you know, I try to make my day so much fun by just thinking, what kind of weird experiences can I have today? And I have no idea what's gonna happen, you know, in the future, especially with this virus going around, but I am so excited to see what's gonna happen next. I may be your strange, not-so-ordinary girl, but I am super excited about my life, and I can't wait to see what's gonna happen next.
clap.
Libby,
I'll drink to that. Is there a talk back?
Libby, you gonna talk back?